had barely merged onto Highway 71 when Maria called me, crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Ma'am, don't go home. Pull over and check the cameras." My hands tightened on the wheel. "What happened? Please, just look." I took the next exit and pulled into a closed barbecue place. My in-laws had been at Austin Bergstrom Airport 20 minutes earlier, smiling beside matching blue suitcases, supposedly headed to Seattle for an Alaskan cruise. My mother-in-law Judith had hugged me a little too long. "Take care of yourself, Rachel," she'd said. I thought she was being kind. I was 44, a captain in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Cavazos. 22 years of staying calm when plans fell apart. But sitting in that parking lot, I felt like I'd forgotten how to breathe. I opened the security app. Front porch empty, kitchen nothing. Then the living room feed, my husband Daniel, arms around another woman's waist, kissing her slowly, comfortably, like it wasn't the first time. She was wearing my cream cardigan. The good Cabernet my battalion commander gave me was open on the coffee table. I called Maria back. "Where are you?" "Laundry room. I came back for my blood pressure pills." I heard voices. "I thought you'd come home early." "Can they see you?" "No, leave through the garage, don't take anything but your purse." "Mrs. Morgan, I'm sorry. This is not your fault." I saved the footage to my phone and emailed myself a copy. Training took over. Preserve the evidence, confirm the facts, don't rush into a bad situation. Then a blue suitcase rolled into frame, the same one from the airport. Judith stepped into my living room, laughing. I told myself it had to be an old recording. Then I saw the timestamp. Live, 11:47 a.m. "I honestly thought she'd insist on walking you to security," the other woman said. Daniel shrugged. "She never questions family." My stomach dropped, not over the affair anymore, but because all three of them were laughing together. His parents knew. Maybe they'd always known. "Did Maria leave?" Judith asked. "I think so," Daniel said. "She's 61, she barely notices anything." I almost laughed. Maria had probably noticed more about my marriage than I ever had. I called her again. "I've seen that woman before," she whispered. "How many times?" "Maybe 6. 6 visits, not a mistake, a routine. Why didn't you tell me?" "I wasn't certain, mister." Morgan always said she was a client, but today your mother-in-law hugged her. There was no introduction. They already knew each other. I hung up and replayed the footage from the start, this time studying the room instead of my husband. 3 coffee cups, a fresh bakery box. Someone had planned this morning. On the driveway camera, a black SUV had pulled in at 11:39, no rideshare, no airport shuttle. Harold popped the trunk, 2 small carry-ons, not 2 weeks of cruise luggage. The big blue suitcase had been empty, a prop. A memory surfaced, 3 months back. Judith had canceled Sunday dinner for a weekend in Waco, the same weekend Daniel skipped church for a client meeting. How many holidays had actually been spent together without me? My phone buzzed. "Daniel, hope your drive back is safe. Love you." I typed back, "Just left Austin, see you tonight." On the feed, he smiled as he sent that message, then kissed her again. Moments later, Judith walked over carrying a thick envelope marked, in black marker, "Attorney." I sat there another 10 minutes before starting the truck and drove to Austin instead of home. I called my battalion XO and told him I had a family emergency. He told me to take care of it. Then I called Linda Brooks, a divorce attorney a fellow officer had once recommended. Her office could see me at 2. Linda's office overlooked Lady Bird Lake. She watched the footage without a flicker of reaction until the envelope appeared. "Pause it." "Zoom in." She read the word and nodded slowly. "They're organized." "You mean the affair?" "No, I mean whatever they're planning." She handed me a legal pad. "Think like an investigator." Not like a wife. That one stung. We built a timeline when Daniel switched us to paperless billing for the clutter, when Judith offered to keep our house documents in her fireproof safe in case of an electrical fire. Thoughtful. At the time. Calculated now. Before I left, Linda gave me one instruction: don't confront anyone. If they're preparing for divorce, they'll expect anger. What they won't expect is a patient woman collecting evidence. Driving home, Daniel called, cheerful as ever. Mom and Dad just landed. Landed already? Yeah, flight was early. No hesitation. No stumble. At 11:39, they'd walked into my living room. At 11:52, he'd texted me they were boarding. Now, 2 hours later, they'd landed. 3 impossible stories, 1 confident liar. That night, I logged into our joint investment account for the first time in months. Nearly $186,000 was gone, not withdrawn at once, but bled out over 8 months in small transfers labeled portfolio adjustment, asset reallocation. I took screenshots of everything. Upstairs, Daniel was humming in the shower. An hour earlier, he'd kissed my forehead and asked if I wanted grilled salmon. I'd smiled and said that sounds nice. The words tasted like cardboard. The next morning, Linda had a checklist ready. Today we collect facts. Feelings can wait. We spent 3 hours going through every account, checking, retirement, our niece's college fund. Then she turned her screen toward me. Bell County property records showed 3 properties, our home, a rental, and a lake cabin outside Burnett. We don't own a cabin. Daniel did, Linda said. He transferred it to Judith 6 weeks ago for $1. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was absurd. You don't sell a lake house for $1. No, Linda said. You hide it. That afternoon, I met Maria at a cafe in Harker Heights. I've worked for your family 10 years, she said, guilt written across her face. You've worked for me. Her eyes filled. For the first time in days, I felt something besides anger, gratitude. Without her, I'd still be living inside Daniel's illusion. Base life carried on around me like nothing had changed. Formation, staff meetings, supply complaints. And strangely, that routine held me together. The Army didn't care about my marriage. It just expected me to do my job. I still could. Friday evening, Linda called. Good news and bad news. I believe Daniel intends to file for divorce, but he's waiting until after your 6-week training deployment to Fort Irwin next month. He wanted me hundreds of miles away while he emptied the house. He thought distance would leave me too overwhelmed to fight. He doesn't realize you've already changed the game, Linda said. Neither did I, but I intended to. For 2 weeks, I lived 2 lives. At home, I smiled over dinner, let him hold my hand, watched old reruns like nothing was wrong. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because I needed him to keep believing I knew nothing. During the day, I built the timeline with Linda. Receipts, property records, transfers, lies. Then one afternoon, she called with something worse than the affair. A sworn statement Daniel had filed months earlier. Refinancing a business loan, read. My wife is frequently absent due to military obligations and has effectively abandoned the marital relationship. I deployed twice in 18 years. Both under 9 months. None of it was true, but he'd been rewriting our story for a long time. That evening, I sat quietly in our church in Killeen. Pastor Allen asked if everything was all right. I asked if Daniel had ever talked to him about our marriage. He said military life had changed you, the pastor admitted, that you were never home. He asked us to pray you'd find your way back to your family. Daniel hadn't just lied to me. He'd lied about me to everyone. The next morning, Linda found where the missing money had gone. Over $140,000 in renovations on the cabin. A new dock, a remodeled kitchen, custom furniture. Invoices signed before the property quietly changed hands. I'd helped pay for a house that wasn't even legally ours. I wanted to throw his clothes in the yard. Instead, I remembered something an old first sergeant once told me in the field. Never move before you understand the whole battlefield. That weekend, Daniel suggested we host a barbecue once his parents got back from their vacation. I almost laughed at the word. Then he told me, without a hint of guilt, that his mother thought I'd been distant lately. He kissed my forehead and walked into the kitchen. My phone buzzed. Linda, we found someone willing to talk. And it's not who you think. It was Emily Carter, 38, a pharmaceutical rep from Waco, and nothing like the woman I'd imagined. When we met in Linda's office, she didn't come with excuses, just 2 words. "I'm sorry." "You knew he was married," I said. "I didn't know he was still your husband." "He told me the divorce finished last winter, that you'd refused to sign, that you'd already moved to base permanently, that you two hadn't shared a bedroom in 3 years." She pulled printed emails from her purse, page after page. I asked why he still wore his ring. "He said taking it off would create problems with clients." I actually laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. Linda asked when the relationship began. 11 months ago. Had she met his parents? Several times. They'd introduced her as the woman Daniel would marry after the divorce. They'd even invited her to Thanksgiving. The same Thanksgiving Daniel told me his parents wanted a small, quiet holiday, while I was helping coordinate flood relief at Fort Bliss. Somehow, I stopped seeing Emily as the enemy. We'd both been fed a different set of lies by the same man. Linda asked if she'd testify. Emily hesitated, then said yes, because the day before, she'd found out Daniel had proposed to another woman entirely. "I guess neither of us was the only one," she said bitterly. "Not 2 women. 3, and none of us had known about the others. I've handled divorce cases for 32 years, Linda told me afterward. I've never seen someone destroy his own case this thoroughly. By early August, Daniel's deposition was scheduled. Linda's only instruction, say as little as possible. He walked in wearing his favorite Navy sport coat, the one I'd bought him for our 15th anniversary, smiling like we were meeting for lunch. "You look good," he said. "I've been sleeping better." That caught him off guard, just for a second. When Linda asked about Emily Carter, he claimed not to know her. She slid across a photograph, the 2 of them hand in hand at a farmer's market, 10 months old, then dinner at a steakhouse, a weekend at Lake Travis, a kiss outside a hotel. "I may have socialized with her," he admitted, "while telling her your divorce was already finalized. I never said that." Linda played a recording. Emily's voice. "Daniel told me the divorce was finished before Christmas." Then his own voice. "I know, I just haven't taken the ring off yet." The room went dead silent. She asked about the cabin transfer. "A gift," he said, "about the $140,000 in renovations paid from our marital account." "I don't recall." Then the question none of us expected. "How many romantic relationships were you involved in this past year?" He sighed. "1." The door opened. Emily walked in. His face went white. "Which one of us were you planning to marry?" she asked quietly. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "You told me Rachel was gone," she said. Then looking at me, "I'm sorry." Then back to him. "And last week I learned you proposed to another woman in Dallas." His attorney's pen hit the table. For the first time, the man who always had an explanation had none. The hearing was set for a Wednesday morning in September at the Bell County Courthouse. I put on my Army service uniform with the same care I gave promotion ceremonies, not to impress anyone, but because that uniform stood for everything Daniel had spent months trying to undermine. Judge Eleanor Watkins presided, silver hair, reading glasses, the calm patience of someone who'd heard every excuse imaginable. Maria testified first, terrified but steady. When Daniel's attorney suggested she'd misunderstood what she saw, she said simply, "I cleaned that house for 10 years. I know the difference between greeting someone and kissing them." Emily testified next, admitting her own mistakes without excusing them. Then Linda entered the evidence: texts, emails, financial records, the security footage. The courtroom watched in silence as Daniel embraced Emily in our living room, as Judith walked in laughing and handed him the envelope marked attorney, as Harold loaded boxes into his truck over several weekends, while bank records showed the matching property transfers. Daniel took the stand and claimed everything had been done in good faith. Linda held up his phone records. "Would you explain why you texted Captain Morgan that your parents had landed in Seattle, when security footage shows all 3 of you eating takeout in her dining room?" Silence. He had nowhere left to hide. Judge Watkins recessed until 1:30. Linda and I ate at a diner across the street. I couldn't tell you what the food tasted like. I thought I'd feel angry, I told her. Mostly I just feel tired. She said that was more common than I'd think. Somewhere in those 2 hours, I realized revenge had stopped being the point. I didn't need Daniel to suffer. I needed the truth to matter. When court resumed, the judge ruled that Daniel had intentionally concealed marital assets, misrepresented finances, and transferred jointly owned property in anticipation of divorce. The cabin transfer for $1 was declared a fraudulent conveyance, reverting to the marital estate. He was ordered to reimburse the missing investment funds and the cabin's renovation costs. I was awarded the house in Killeen. He kept his business, but only after a substantial settlement and covering most of my legal fees due to his conduct during discovery. Marriage sometimes fails, the judge said, looking at him. Dishonesty is what turned this case into something far more serious. Outside, the Texas heat hit like an oven. Daniel walked to his car without a word. Harold lingered behind and said, "I owe you an apology. I should have stopped this." I didn't answer. "It became my business the day I stayed quiet," he added. I believed him, but some apologies come too late. Before we left, I told Linda I wanted to do one more thing, pay off Maria's mortgage. She'd spent 10 years caring for my home. When my world fell apart, she chose courage over comfort. No court order could repay that. 6 months later, I drove back to Austin Bergstrom to pick up my sister Claire for Thanksgiving. Same highway, same rolling hills, same old country songs on the radio. Only this time, my hands weren't shaking. The airport no longer meant betrayal. It meant survival. I was still at Fort Cavazos, recently promoted, with a small office overlooking the motor pool. Maria still worked with me, though by now we both just called her family. The day the divorce was final, I handed her an envelope showing her mortgage paid in full. She cried before she finished reading it. "You spent 10 years taking care of my home," I told her. "You did what many people are afraid to do." You told the truth. She still brings tamales every Christmas Eve. I still pretend to argue about it. As for Daniel, I stopped checking on his life. His business lost clients once the divorce went public. The cabin sold. He moved into a small apartment outside Temple. Whether he ever found happiness, I don't know, and for the first time I didn't care. That wasn't bitterness. It was freedom. Now, once a month, I volunteer with a support group for military spouses going through divorce. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I just tell my story. One afternoon, a woman asked me, "How did you stop wanting revenge?" "I didn't," I told her. "I just realized revenge wasn't what I actually wanted." "What did you want?" "The truth." Once it had a chance to speak for itself, I didn't have to carry the anger anymore. Watching Claire come through the terminal, waving both arms like she always has since we were kids. I understood something I couldn't see that day in the parking lot when Maria told me to check the cameras. That footage didn't destroy my life. It saved years I would have otherwise lost. Sometimes the hardest moments are the ones that quietly set us free. If a moment like that ever changed the direction of your life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you for spending this time with me, and never underestimate the quiet strength that comes from choosing honesty over anger. This has been Family Justice Vault. Until next time.